The large silver ship appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. It was a Tuesday morning in May 2087 when every screen on the planet suddenly showed the same message. Attention inhabitants of Sol 3. The Galactic Hegemony welcomes you. Prepare for diplomatic contact. World leaders scrambled to respond as news channels broadcast non-stop footage of the alien vessel. It was shaped like a giant teardrop, its surface rippling with blue lights that pulsed in patterns no human could understand. Within hours, the United Nations called an emergency meeting. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York while scientists and military personnel debated what to do. They had no weapons that could reach orbit quickly enough, and no one knew if the aliens were friendly or hostile. "We need to show them we are peaceful but strong," said Commander Susan Wright of the United States Space Force. She stood tall in her blue uniform, her gray eyes scanning the room of nervous diplomats. At 45, she had spent her life preparing for space missions, but never for this moment. Next to her stood Major Peter Collins, a communications expert with the International Space Alliance. His job was to find a way to talk to beings from another world. "We should respond on all frequencies," he suggested. "Show them we understood their message." The UN Secretary General nodded. "Do it." 24 hours later, a smaller ship broke off from the main vessel and descended toward Earth. It landed smoothly on the Great Lawn in front of the UN building, where a reception committee waited nervously. Commander Wright and Major Collins stood at the front of the group, trying to look confident. The ship's door opened silently. 3 beings stepped out. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms like humans, but their skin was pale blue and their heads were slightly larger, with wide-set eyes that blinked sideways. They wore simple gray suits that seemed to flow like liquid metal. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Zixtar, Junior Diplomatic Officer of the Galactic Hegemony," it said in perfect English. "I bring greetings from the 37 sentient species of our alliance." Commander Wright stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored by your visit." Zixtar made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your planet has been classified as a Class 3 pre-warp species. This means you are primitive but have potential. We have come to inform you of your new status as a protectorate of the hegemony." Major Collins frowned. "Protectorate? We didn't ask for protection." "That is irrelevant," said Zixtar. "The decision has been made by the Galactic Senate. You will benefit from our oversight." The aliens were invited inside for a formal meeting. Representatives from Earth's nations sat across from the 3 aliens, who seemed bored by the whole affair. "Let me explain your situation clearly," said Zixtar, examining a small device that projected holographic images into the air. "Your species has barely managed to reach your own moon. Your technology is crude. Your understanding of physics is amusing. We have been watching you for some time." Commander Wright kept her face neutral, but her hands tightened into fists under the table. "We have made great progress in recent years. Our scientists, your scientists," interrupted Zixtar, "are like children playing with toys they don't understand. The hegemony has existed for 12,000 years. We have terraformed dead worlds and harnessed the power of stars." "What does being a protectorate mean for us?" asked Major Collins. The alien displayed a new hologram showing the solar system. "You may continue to develop at your own pace. You may colonize your own system if you wish, but you are forbidden from expanding beyond it for at least 500 Earth years." The room erupted in angry murmurs. The Secretary General raised his hand for quiet. "And if we refuse these terms?" All 3 aliens turned their sideways blinking eyes to him. "That would be unwise," said Zixtar simply. "Quarantine measures for non-compliant species are strict." In the back of the room, a man with wild gray hair and thick glasses listened intently. Dr. Alan Martinez was not supposed to be there. As the head of the quantum physics department at MIT, he had talked his way into the meeting by claiming he could help translate alien scientific concepts. Now he sat quietly, recording everything on his tablet. "Will you share any of your technology with us?" asked Commander Wright. Medical advances? Clean energy? Zixtar made that strange laughing sound again. That would be like giving a plasma rifle to an infant. You are not ready. In time, perhaps, you will advance enough to understand our gifts. The meeting lasted 3 more hours. The aliens answered questions but shared very little useful information. They explained that a small observation post would be established on Mars to monitor Earth's development. Any attempt to disable this post would be considered an act of aggression. Before leaving, Zixtar approached Commander Wright privately. "I sense you are disappointed, human." She looked directly into the alien's strange eyes. "We had hoped first contact would be a meeting of equals." "Few species are equal in this galaxy," said Zixtar. "But take comfort in this. At least you are not alone in the universe anymore." As the alien ship lifted off, Dr. Martinez slipped away from the crowd. His mind was racing with ideas. In his pocket was a small device he had managed to scan one of the aliens with when they weren't looking. The readings made no sense with current human understanding of physics, but they gave him a starting point. That night, as the world's media exploded with news of humanity's new protectorate status, Dr. Martinez sent a secure message to several colleagues around the world. The subject line read, "They think we're primitive, let's prove them wrong." 6 months later, Commander Wright and Major Collins were called to a secret meeting beneath the Pentagon. They were surprised to find Dr. Martinez there, along with military and scientific leaders from 12 countries. "We've been studying the alien technology," said Dr. Martinez, his eyes bright with excitement. "They think we're too stupid to understand their physics, but they're wrong. I've already figured out how their propulsion system works in theory." "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" asked Commander Wright. "They've given us 500 years to stay in our solar system," said Martinez with a smile. "I say we use that time to build something that will shock the entire galactic hegemony. Something they would never expect from primitive humans." "What exactly?" asked Major Collins. Dr. Martinez touched a button, and a hologram appeared, crude, compared to the aliens' technology, but clear enough. It showed the dwarf planet Ceres, but transformed into something else entirely. "A planet-sized warship," he said. "The most powerful vessel the galaxy has ever seen." Commander Wright stared at the image, then slowly smiled. "How do we start?" 10 years passed since the aliens of the galactic hegemony had declared Earth a protectorate. On the surface, life continued normally. People went to work, watched sports, and raised families. Few thought about the small alien observation post on Mars that monitored their activities. Even fewer knew about what was happening deep beneath the Mariana Trench. In a facility carved into the ocean floor, Director Olivia Jones stood before a huge screen showing a 3D model of the dwarf planet Ceres. At 52, she had once been a NASA administrator before being recruited to lead the United Terran Defense Initiative, or UTDI. Her short brown hair was now streaked with gray, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. "Dr. Martinez, please update us on Project Sledgehammer," she said. Dr. Alan Martinez had changed much in 10 years. His wild hair was now completely white, and deep lines marked his face from countless sleepless nights. But when he spoke about his work, he became animated like a young man. "We've successfully hollowed out 20% of Ceres without detection," he said, using a laser pointer to indicate areas on the model. "The gravity generators are being installed in the central chamber." Around the table sat the core team of humanity's greatest secret project. Dr. Catherine Bell, a woman in her 40s with curly red hair and freckles, spoke next. "My team has solved the dark energy equation. In theory, we can now manipulate gravity on a planetary scale. We just need more power." Next to her, Frank Miller nodded. He was a large man with massive hands that seemed too clumsy for detailed work. Yet he was perhaps the finest engineer humanity had ever produced. "The fusion reactors are ahead of schedule," he said in his deep voice. "We've found a way to make them 40% more efficient than our original designs." Director Jones nodded with satisfaction. "And the hegemony observers? Any sign they suspect our activities?" Lisa Rodriguez, the project's computing specialist, shook her head. She was younger than the others, only 35, with long, black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Our decoy signals are working perfectly. We've created a false data stream that shows normal mining operations on Ceres. Nothing suspicious. Good, said Jones. Because yesterday we received word that the hegemony has reduced its monitoring of our system. The room fell silent as she continued. Their observer, Krelnox, has reported to his superiors that humans appear compliant and technologically stagnant. They're withdrawing most of their surveillance except for the automated post on Phobos. Doctor, Martinez smiled. They truly believe we're no threat, that we're just accepting our place as their pets. Their mistake, said Miller, cracking his knuckles. Director Jones pulled up a news screen showing a timeline. This is good news, but we must remain cautious. The next phase is critical. Dr. Bell, your team will begin integration of the gravity engines next month. Mr. Miller, your engineers will need to work around the clock on the outer shell mechanics. What about power requirements? Asked Dr. Bell. Even with the improved fusion reactors, we're still short for full operational capacity. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. I've been working on something. He pulled a small device from his pocket, no larger than a coin. This contains elements we extracted from the alien materials we scanned 10 years ago. It's a power amplifier unlike anything we've ever built. With 100 of these, we could power the entire Dreadnought. Can we make more? Asked Jones. Give me 6 months and better facilities on Ceres itself, said Martinez. Jones nodded. Approved. Ms. Rodriguez will need your quantum AI systems to manage the power distribution. The calculations will be beyond human capability. Already working on it, said Rodriguez. My newest AI architecture can handle the load. It's not sentient, but it's the most advanced computing system ever built. The meeting continued for hours as they discussed the thousands of details involved in transforming a dwarf planet into a warship. When they finally finished, only Jones and Martinez remained in the room. Do you ever wonder if we're making a mistake, Alan? Asked Jones quietly. The hegemony has technology thousands of years beyond ours. If they discover what we're doing— Martinez shook his head firmly. They gave us no choice, Olivia. They categorized us as inferior, denied us our right to grow and explore. Yes, they could destroy us if they discover our plan too soon, but the alternative is centuries of stagnation under their thumb. Jones sighed. Sometimes I feel like we're gambling with the fate of our entire species. We are, said Martinez simply, but humans have always been gamblers. 3 months later, the first major crisis struck the project. Miller and his team were installing the initial gravity engine modules on Ceres when a critical power coupling failed. The resulting cascade of system failures threatened to destroy years of work and expose their activities to the hegemony. In the emergency control room on Ceres, alarm lights flashed as technicians scrambled to contain the damage. John Carter, a young engineer with only 2 years on the project, studied the schematics frantically. The main coupling is completely fried, he reported to Miller over the communication link, and the backup systems are overheating. We have maybe 20 minutes before total failure. Miller's voice came back tense. If those systems fail, the radiation will be detected by the hegemony sensor array. We need a manual override. That would require someone to enter the drive core, said Carter. The radiation levels are already dangerous. There was a pause before Miller responded. I'm on my way. No, said Carter quickly. You're needed to oversee the entire engineering division. I'll go. Before anyone could stop him, Carter grabbed a radiation suit and headed for the access tunnels. Director Jones's voice came over his headset. Engineer Carter, this is a direct order. Wait for proper authorization. With respect, Director, said Carter as he sealed his helmet. We don't have time for proper authorization. The drive core chamber was bathed in an eerie blue light. The radiation meters on Carter's suit were already in the red zone as he worked to manually bypass the damaged coupling. His hands moved quickly, connecting new pathways for the energy flow. Sweat poured down his face inside his helmet, and he could feel the heat even through his protective suit. Almost there, he muttered, to himself. Just one more connection. As he finished, the blue light faded and the normal operating lights came back on. In the control room, Rodriguez confirmed that the system was stabilizing. The crisis had been averted, but when they pulled Carter from the core chamber, he was barely conscious. The medical team rushed him to the infirmary. 2 days later, Carter awoke to find Director Jones sitting beside his bed. "You disobeyed a direct order," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he replied weakly. She looked at him sternly, then her expression softened. "And you saved the project. Thank you." She stood up to leave, then paused. "The doctors say you'll recover fully. When you're back on your feet, report to me. You've earned a promotion." As she walked away, Carter closed his eyes with a smile. He had helped keep humanity's greatest secret safe for another day. Somewhere above them, the hegemony continued to watch, never suspecting that in the darkness of space, a planet was slowly becoming a weapon. 20 years into the project, Ceres no longer resembled a dwarf planet. From the outside, it still looked much the same to avoid detection, but inside it had been transformed. 90% of its interior had been hollowed out and filled with machinery. The massive gravity engines were now fully installed and ready for testing. Frank Miller walked through the central engine room, checking readings on his tablet. At 63, his hair was completely gray, and his large frame had begun to stoop slightly with age. But his mind remained as sharp as ever. He nodded with satisfaction at what he saw. The engines were operating perfectly at low power. "Chief, Engineer Miller, Director Jones requests your presence in the command center," said a voice over his communicator. Miller made his way through the maze of corridors that filled the interior of Ceres. Thousands of people now lived and worked inside the transformed dwarf planet. Some had not seen the actual sun in years, though the lighting systems mimicked Earth's daily cycle. The command center was a large dome at what had once been the center of Ceres. Director Olivia Jones stood at the main console, her hair now completely white. Next to her was Dr. Catherine Bell studying a complex series of equations. "Frank, good timing," said Jones. "The Hegemony Observer ship is scheduled to make its annual pass through the system tomorrow. We need to be certain our camouflage systems are working perfectly." Lisa Rodriguez, now the head of all computing systems on the Dreadnought, looked up from her station. "The holographic projectors are ready. When they scan Ceres, all they'll see is a normal mining operation." "And the energy signatures?" asked Miller. "Masked," Rodriguez confirmed. "We're routing excess heat through the core and disguising power readings as standard fusion mining operations." Dr. Alan Martinez entered the room, walking slowly with the help of a cane. At 75, he was the oldest member of the original team, but his mind remained brilliant. "The real question is whether our shield systems will work if they decide to take a closer look." Jones frowned. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. We're not ready for a confrontation yet." The next day, tension filled the command center as they tracked the Hegemony Observer ship entering the solar system. It was a small vessel, designed for surveillance rather than combat, with a crew of only 3 aliens. "They're approaching Mars now," reported Rodriguez, watching the tracking screen. "Standard patrol pattern so far." Hours passed as the observer continued its inspection of the system. Finally, it turned toward the asteroid belt where Ceres was located. "Activate camouflage systems," ordered Jones. "All non-essential power systems. Shut down." The holographic projectors came online, creating the illusion of a simple mining colony. Deep inside Ceres, thousands of people remained absolutely still and silent, though they were far enough inside that no sound could reach the surface. "They're scanning us," said Rodriguez softly. Minutes that felt like hours passed. Then, "They're moving on," she reported with relief. "Continuing their standard patrol route." A collective sigh of relief filled the command center. The deception had worked. Later that week, Miller supervised the first full-power test of a single gravity engine. If successful, it would prove that their design could actually move Ceres as planned. "Power levels at 80%, reported John Carter, now Miller's second in command. In the 10 years since his brave actions during the crisis, Carter had become one of the most respected engineers on the project. All systems stable. Take it to 90%, ordered Miller. The low hum of the engine grew louder. On monitoring screens, they could see the energy levels rising toward the red line. 90% achieved, said Carter. Do we push to full power? Miller hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Let's see what this thing can really do. Going to full power in 3, 2, 1. A deep vibration ran through the entire structure of Ceres as the engine reached maximum output. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then warning lights began flashing across the control panels. We have power fluctuations in sectors 4 through 7, reported one technician. Structural integrity compromised in the southern quadrant, called another. Miller moved quickly despite his age. Reroute power through the secondary conduits. Carter stabilized the magnetic containment field. For 10 tense minutes, they fought to bring the engine under control. Finally, the warning stopped and the engine settled into a steady hum at full power. Miller wiped sweat from his forehead. Status report? Engine stable at 100% power, said Carter with a grin. We did it, Chief. The gravity. Drive works. The news spread quickly through Ceres. That night, a rare celebration was held in the main mess hall. Even Director Jones allowed herself a small glass of the alcohol that some engineers had been secretly distilling. To success, she said, raising her glass. And to the look on the hegemony's faces when they see what we've built, added Dr. Bell. Following month, Dr. Bell unveiled her completed weapon system design. She stood before the project's leadership in the main conference room, displaying diagrams on the large screen. I call it the molecular disruptor, she explained. It works by targeting the atomic bonds of any material and systematically breaking them apart. In simple terms? Asked Jones. Bell smiled. It can tear apart anything. Ships, stations, even small moons if necessary. Have you tested it? Asked Martinez. On a small scale, yes. We need to conduct a full-scale test, but finding a target that won't draw attention is difficult. Jones thought for a moment. There's an asteroid about 2 kilometers wide that's drifted into the outer system. It's far enough from any hegemony. Patrol routes. We could move it farther out and use it as a target. A week later, they were ready for the test. A small team took a mining ship out to the chosen asteroid and planted remote thrusters to move it to a safe distance. Then they returned to Ceres and prepared the weapon. Target locked, reported the weapons officer. Firing solution ready. Fire, ordered Jones. A beam of light barely visible in the vacuum of space shot from a hidden port on Ceres. When it struck the asteroid, there was no explosion. Instead, the giant rock simply began to come apart, breaking into smaller and smaller pieces until nothing remained but dust. The command center was silent as they watched the sensor readings confirm total destruction. How long until we have full weapons coverage? Jones asked finally. 3 months to install disruptors around the entire surface, replied Bell. Then we'll have firing solutions in all directions. Jones nodded. Good. And the drive system integration? 6 months, said Miller. Maybe less if everything goes well. Then in 6 months, said Jones, looking at each of them, we'll have the most powerful warship ever created by any species, and the galactic hegemony won't know what hit them. In the Grand Council chamber of the galactic hegemony, Admiral Zarnvakel paced back and forth. His blue skin had darkened with age, and the ridges on his head had grown more pronounced in the 30 years since he had first assigned Earth to be monitored. Now promoted to High Commander, he was responsible for security in 12 star systems, including the Sol system where Earth was located. High Commander, we have detected unusual gravitational readings near the Sol system, reported. A junior officer, Zarnvakel, frowned. Probably a sensor malfunction. That system contains nothing of interest except the primitive humans. The readings were quite strong, sir. They do not match any known natural phenomenon. Zarnvakel waved a hand dismissively. The humans are centuries away from developing any technology that could cause gravitational anomalies. Their last report showed they have barely established colonies on their moon and the planet Mars. Nevertheless, protocols require investigation of all unusual readings. the officer persisted. With a sigh, Zarnvakel nodded. Very well. Dispatch Captain Vreelox on the scout ship Swift Observer to investigate, but I expect this to be nothing. Captain Vreelox was young for his position, having risen quickly through the ranks of the hegemony fleet. He had never encountered humans before, and was curious about these beings that were considered so primitive. His scout ship entered the Sol system 3 days later, moving at speeds the humans supposedly could not detect. Standard observation pattern, he ordered his small crew of 5. Keep passive sensors only. No need to alert the natives to our presence. The scout ship moved through the system, recording data on the human colonies. They had expanded somewhat on Mars since the last report, but nothing that indicated significant technological advancement. Next, they headed toward the asteroid belt, where humans had established some mining operations. Meanwhile, on Ceres, alarms suddenly blared through the command center. "Director Jones," called out Rodriguez urgently. "We have a hegemony vessel approaching, scout class, small crew." Olivia Jones, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, looked up from her console. "Are they scanning us?" "Passive scans only so far." "They don't seem suspicious yet," Jones thought quickly. "We're too close to completion to be discovered now. How ready are we for an emergency test of the drive system?" Frank Miller, his face lined with decades of hard work, checked his readings. "We can do a short jump. 10 seconds maximum at this stage. It might drain our reserves, but it will work." "And if they detect us during the power-up sequence?" asked Dr. Bell. "Then we show them what we've built," said Jones firmly. "Prepare for an emergency jump. All personnel to secure stations. This is not a drill." Throughout the giant structure that had once been a dwarf planet, people rushed to secure themselves and their equipment. The mighty engines deep within Ceres began to hum as power flowed into them. On the hegemony scout ship, Captain Vreelox was becoming bored with his assignment. Just as he was about to order a course back to hegemony space, his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Captain!" Massive power surge detected from the dwarf planet designated Ceres. Vreelox jumped to his feet. "What kind of surge?" "Unknown technology, sir. Energy readings are off our scales." Before the captain could respond, something impossible happened. The dwarf planet Ceres simply vanished from its orbit. "Where did it go?" demanded Vreelox. "Did it explode?" The sensor officer worked frantically at his controls. "No debris field. Sir, it's just gone." For 10 seconds, the hegemony crew stared in disbelief at their sensors. Then just as suddenly, Ceres reappeared, but in a different position 2 million kilometers from its original location. "By the first ancestors," whispered Vreelox. "They've developed teleportation technology, or some kind of jump drive." "Sir, should we report this to High Command?" asked his communications officer. Vreelox nodded, still staring at the screen. "Yes, immediately. Send emergency priority." His words were cut off as their ship was suddenly caught in a tractor beam of incredible power. Inside Ceres, now officially called the TDS Defiance, Director Jones faced a critical decision. "They've seen us," said Rodriguez. "They're sending a transmission to the hegemony. Can we block it?" asked Jones. Rodriguez shook her head. "Too late. The first data packet is already gone." Jones looked around at her team, the people who had given decades of their lives to this project. "Then we have no choice. We reveal ourselves now, before they can mount a response. Activate all systems. Bring the alien ship aboard." The outer shell of Ceres began to change. Sections of the surface slid apart, revealing massive weapon ports and engine exhausts. The disguise that had fooled the hegemony for 30 years fell away, showing the true nature of what humanity had built. Captain Vreelox and his crew watched in horror through their viewports as they were pulled toward what was clearly no longer a simple dwarf planet, but a massive warship of unprecedented size. "How is this possible?" Vreelox whispered. They were a Class 3 pre-warp species. His ship was guided into a giant docking bay that could have held 100 vessels its size. When the atmosphere was restored, armed humans in sleek uniforms surrounded the ship. "You will disembark peacefully," came a message in perfect hegemony standard language. "You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Having no choice, Vreelox and his crew stepped out of their ship. They were escorted through corridors that seemed to stretch for kilometers, passing thousands of humans going about their duties. Finally, they were brought to a large command center. Director Olivia Jones stood to greet them, flanked by her senior staff. Despite her age, she stood tall and proud. "Captain Vreelox, welcome aboard the Terran defense ship Defiance. I am Director Jones, and these are my commanders. Military Commander Scott Anderson, Chief Science Officer Martinez, and Flight Commander Mary Davis." Vreelox stared at them in disbelief. "How did you build this? Your species was assessed as primitive." Jones smiled slightly. "Your hegemony made a serious mistake 30 years ago. You judged us by our technology, not by our potential. You told us we were inferior and must stay in our system for 500 years. So we used that time to build something that would change the balance of power. The hegemony will send warships," warned Vreelox. "We're counting on it," replied Commander Anderson, a stern-faced man in a military uniform. "But first, you're going to deliver a message for us." They showed the captain around the Defiance, demonstrating capabilities that the hegemony had believed were centuries beyond human reach. They showed him the gravity engines that could move a planet, weapons that could disintegrate matter, and shield technology that could withstand the force of a small star. After 6 hours, they returned him to his ship with a data crystal containing a message. "Tell your High Commander that humanity will no longer accept protectorate status," said Jones as Vreelox prepared to depart. "We demand recognition as equals and free access to the stars." As the scout ship left the massive Dreadnought behind, Vreelox knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. The primitives had built something that would shock the entire hegemony to its core. The Galactic Hegemony Senate chamber erupted in chaos when Captain Vreelox's report was read. 200 representatives from 37 species shouted over each other, demanding action or explanation. At the center of the storm stood high Commander Zarn Vakel, his blue skin now almost purple with rage and embarrassment. "Impossible," he shouted above the noise. "The humans could not have built such a weapon. They were primitive when we found them only 30 years ago." The Senate leader, an ancient being from a species that resembled tall, thin trees, raised his branches for silence. "The evidence is clear, High Commander. The humans have created a planet-sized warship. Captain Vreelox's sensor data confirms it. The question now is, what shall we do about it?" Zarn Vakel stepped forward. "We must crush this threat immediately. I request command of our most powerful battle fleet. The Dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, and its support ships can reduce this human weapon to dust." Many senators nodded in agreement, but others looked concerned. An older senator spoke up. "If the humans could build such a vessel in secret, who knows what other surprises they might have? Perhaps we should open diplomatic channels first." "Diplomacy is for equals," snapped Zarn Vakel. "These humans are upstarts who need to be taught their place." After hours of debate, the Senate narrowly approved Zarn Vakel's plan. The largest battle fleet assembled in 50 years would depart for the Sol system immediately. Back on the TDS, Defiance, Director Jones and her team prepared for the coming confrontation. They knew the hegemony would not take their challenge lightly. "How long until they arrive?" Jones asked during the daily command meeting. "Based on their fastest ships, between 5 and 7 days," replied Commander Anderson. "That gives us time for final preparations." Dr. Bell, her red hair now white but her mind still brilliant, looked worried. "Are we really ready to face their most advanced weapons? They've had thousands of years to perfect their technology." Chief Engineer Miller smiled. "They've had thousands of years to become complacent. We've had 30 years of desperate innovation. Our shields will hold." Lisa Rodriguez entered the room, her face excited. "Director, I have important news. The mining ships have returned from the asteroid belt." Jones looked up sharply. "All of them? That wasn't scheduled for another month." "They've completed their work ahead of schedule," said Rodriguez with a meaningful look. Jones understood immediately. "So it's ready then? Both of them?" "Yes, Director. All 3 are now fully operational." The senior staff looked at each other in amazement. Their secret plan had worked even better than hoped. 6 days later, the hegemony battle fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. 20 massive warships, led by the Dreadnought Eternal Dominion, moved into formation. The Dominion was the pride of the hegemony fleet, almost 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. High Commander Zarn Vakel stood on the command deck, looking at the holographic display of the system. "Where is the human vessel?" he demanded. "It appears to be in orbit around their homeworld," reported his second-in-command. "Shall we approach?" "Yes, but maintain battle readiness. These humans have proven tricky." The fleet moved toward Earth, sensors, scanning for any sign of threat. As they neared Mars, alarms suddenly blared across every ship. "Commander, new contacts!" shouted the sensor officer. "3 massive objects just appeared on our sensors." "What? Where?" demanded Zarn Vakel. "One at the coordinates of the human ship we knew about, but 2 more have just appeared from the asteroid belt." "They were hiding there, sir." Zarn Vakel stared in disbelief as the tactical display updated. Not 1 but 3 planet-sized dreadnoughts were now moving to surround his fleet. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "Their construction facilities couldn't possibly have built 3 such vessels." On the TDS Defiance, Director Jones smiled as she watched the hegemony fleet's confusion. "Open a channel to their command ship," she ordered. When the connection was established, she faced High Commander Zarn Vakel for the first time. "High Commander, I am Director Olivia Jones of the Terran Defense Force. I see you've noticed our other ships, the TDS Courage and TDS Liberty." Zarn Vakel struggled to maintain his composure. "This is an act of war against the hegemony. Surrender your vessels immediately or face destruction." Jones shook her head. "We both know that's not going to happen. Your long-range scans have already told you what our ships can do. We don't want war, Commander. We want recognition." Before Zarn Vakel could respond, all 3 human dreadnoughts suddenly vanished from their positions. A moment later, they reappeared, completely surrounding the hegemony fleet. "As you can see," continued Jones calmly, "we could have destroyed your fleet already if that was our intention. Instead, we invite you to a diplomatic summit aboard the Defiance. You may bring whatever security you feel necessary." Trapped and outmaneuvered, Zarn Vakel had no choice but to agree. The summit took place in the largest conference room aboard the Defiance. The human delegation was led by Ambassador Daniel Brown, a tall man with dark skin and a calm demeanor. Supporting him were the key scientists and military personnel who had built the dreadnoughts. The hegemony delegation, led by a still fuming Zarn Vakel, took their seats across the table. 30 years ago," began Ambassador Brown, "your people came to Earth and told us we were primitive. You restricted us to our own solar system for 500 years. You denied us the stars." He gestured to the viewport where Earth could be seen in the distance. "Humanity has always pushed boundaries. We've always looked to the horizon and wondered what lies beyond. By trying to cage us, you only motivated us to build the means of our freedom." Zarn Vakel glared at the humans. "What are your demands?" "Simple," replied Brown. "Full membership in the Galactic Hegemony, access to trade routes, the freedom to colonize uninhabited systems, the same rights as any other spacefaring civilization." "And if we refuse?" asked Zarn Vakel. Ambassador Brown smiled gently. "We're not threatening you, High Commander. We're simply informing you that humanity will take its place among the stars. You can either welcome us as allies or step aside." The negotiations lasted 3 days. In the end, faced with technology that surpassed their own and the realization that they had severely underestimated humanity's potential, the hegemony agreed to all the human terms. As the hegemony fleet prepared to depart, Director Jones stood on the observation deck with Dr. Martinez. Though both were now elderly, they lived to see their life's work completed. "Did you ever imagine this day would come, Alan?" she asked softly. The old scientist smiled. "I knew humans were capable of greatness. All we needed was the right motivation." Below them, the first human diplomatic ships were preparing to depart for the galactic capital, escorted by the planet-sized guardians they had built. What do we do now? Asked Jones. Now, said Martinez, looking out at the stars. We explore, just as we always wanted to.